Hello and welcome to the Tech About Town podcast brought to you by Communitech. My name is Alex Kinsella.
And I'm Sasha Bell. And in this podcast, we are exploring the intersection of the tech industry and the Toronto-Waterloo corridor, challenges of tech founders, tackling big... We're going to interview people who are tackling big problems. I don't know. What do you think? What are we doing in this podcast?
Okay, I'll do my version.
Okay, great. We'll just keep going until we figure it out. Hello and welcome to the Tech About Town podcast, brought to you by Communitech.
Oh, I like it.
I'm Sasha Bell.
My name is Alex Kinsella.
And Communitech is a nonprofit organization based in Waterloo region. We are currently recording out of the Communitech Hub, which is located in downtown Kitchener. Communitech for 26 years has been helping founders start, grow, and succeed. We help tech founders and tech entrepreneurs with capital, access to market, talent, and community, which is what we're really good at. We're really good at throwing really big fun parties and conferences, and we bring together thought leaders and really try to provide support for tech founders in any way that we can for the continued growth of our economy, really. Yeah. That's the big
Well, what
mission.
Makes this interesting too on this is I don't work here.
No.
I used to.
Yeah.
You do work here.
I do.
But you don't really, I mean, you've worked for tech companies, but your background's not tech.
No, I don't have a tech role. No. I'm a creative director.
Yeah. So what we are hoping from this is that we're looking at from kind of an outside perspective. I've worked at some tech companies in town, but
well, you're a journalist, right? So you're a writer. So you've got like a very. We both, I think, are coming at this from like a curiosity standpoint. We're both very curious. We're interviewing these people because we really want to know what their take is on the tech industry.
Well, and today's guest is a really good example of that. Marianne Bulger, who's not related to Whitey Bulger, the notorious Boston. She brought it up. But what's interesting, Marianne's has also came from a non-tech background into tech and venture capital and talent. But what's interesting in this is, again, it's these people who we all come from different backgrounds into our roles in tech. And I'm really excited to kind of hear what she has to say about some pressing problems. Number one, being talent.
Yeah, in this episode, she tells us about her role and her background and her story and how she landed in her, she founded a company called True. What's it called? True.
It's called True.
True. Yeah. And she also talks about the big challenges, like capital B, big challenges facing talent. She gives us tips on what you can do as an individual person, if you're employed or not employed. She talks about how to build great culture with companies to retain amazing talent. She covered a lot. She was great.
I feel like she's done it before.
She been on a podcast?
Yeah, like
she was very good at talking about what she does. Yeah, it was very interesting
in a good way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, she was great. Right, I felt instantly like we were friends, which was really nice. She was very like personable, and I just thought she was really wonderful.
Fast friends in the podcast.
Fast, but that's why I'm here, because I can make friends with the park bench. Truly, I'm just here to make friends.
Let's open the door and let Marianne in, and we'll talk to her.
Okay.
So my name's Marianne Bulger. I am a mother of 2 little kids. I live in a land of chaos with 2 under 2.5 right now. I've worked across the tech community here in Canada for 12 years, wearing a million different hats, it feels like, from accelerator incubator to tech meetup groups, operating within companies, network intelligence, was head of platform and venture capital at Golden Ventures, and then co-founded in partnership with that team, Prospect, which is our largest national job board, which now lives here at Communitech. I was a talent partner at Drive Capital, and I am now a partner at True Search, working on executive search for Canada's fastest growing companies. I have a dog named Patsy Cline. And
I have a cat named Stevie Nicks.
Wow, that's
Oh, it's a match made in heaven.
that wasn't even planned.
I think Patsy Cline might be a better name. Anyways, go on.
So I have a dream about hosting a podcast that allows us to peek under the hood of a company and better understand all of the folks and all of the relationships that exist behind the scenes.
Like the different dynamics.
The different dynamics. In tech, we usually put only the founder and CEO on stage. We
Right.
know a lot about them. We know all about their vision for the company. We take them out to dinner. We send them to conferences. We host entire conferences for them. Very rarely are we putting any of the other operators on stage or in the spotlight. We are not taking the chief product officers out to dinner. We are not asking the, VP of people or VP of talent who has hired 100 people in the past year and a half and really hustled to scale that business. We're not asking them to stand on stage and tell their story. So the vision I actually have is not just about those single individuals, but the relationship between individuals within an organization. So when a CEO decides to hire a chief people officer, it's more than just a desire to increase headcount. It's a desire to increase headcount, retention, lower churn, productivity, all of those pieces. Also, build a vision and foresight of the business in partnership with that chief people officer, likely their CFO or VP of revenue. These relationships just go unnoticed, and they are often the fundamental ingredient of what makes a company successful. And I'm just insanely curious about those relationships that have succeeded and made a massive difference to some of our great Canadian tech companies, and whether we can learn from those relationships and those stories that we don't know anything about yet.
Oh, wow. I would listen to that.
You think so?
Yes. That sounds really interesting.
I like it because you always think of whenever a senior leader leaves, like not necessarily a CEO or a COO, but VP of product leaves, and then you see like a couple other senior-ish people go with them, and you start to go, oh, like it's not just they're taking their friends with them. It's like they have relationships and they know how to get things done. So if I was going over, to a company and I was, CTO and I wanted, the best chief product officer, best vice president of product, I'd be like, you're coming with, because we're just going to rebuild over here.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when people are looking for a job, they're often optimizing for a variety of different things. But the most important thing they're optimizing for is happiness, fulfillment, psychological safety, feeling accepted for who they are. Finding a great team to work with is actually the most important thing when you're looking for a job. The people you work with matter more than anything. Are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always say that you can be selling world peace with assholes and you will hate your job.
Yeah.
You can be
So
selling
true.
a can of soup with great people and you will love what you do every single day. I think that anyone, whether they're listening here or just in general, if you've ever had the opportunity to work with a high performing team where you feel like you are accepted for yourself, there's room for growth, you can experiment, learn, everyone is accountable to one another, just a great team, you're chasing that for the rest of your career. You really are. You're trying to find that same energy, synergy that you felt in that environment, in that moment. That's something that I think we can collectively do a better job at exposing are the stories of these incredible teams and what it was about the culture of that company, the timing, the leadership.
Do you feel that as for like C-suite executives don't value building culture as much? Like, do you think that should be more of a focus?
Not at all. I think that C-suite executives care a lot about culture. I think they often don't know what it is or how to define it. And I think that it's something that's very hard to pin down. I also think that there are external inputs, especially in tech, like investment dollars and growth expectations that often overshadow culture and push executives and leaders to compromise on some of their cultural standards in some scenarios. I also think that fundamentally most executives, especially early founders, don't really know what they're doing. And we all know that already. And the ones who are able to hold up their hands in the air and say to their team, I don't know what I'm doing. That's why you're all here, and that's why we're doing it together. Those are the ones that have the humility to be a leader at 10 people and a leader at 500 people, because through that entire journey, they are just constantly learning, bringing in the experts, surrounding themselves with the right people, iterating on their cultures, focusing on what it means to create a high level of productivity within their companies and job satisfaction. And they also have just a healthy appetite for risk because they're taking risks every day in their own learner's journey. So they're able to give permission to their executives and their teams to do the same.
Learning mindset. Hannah Brown loves a learning mindset. Do you know what Hannah Brown is?
No, I just you're a mom. We're two moms. Learner's mindset.
Learner's mindset. Learn on the job.
Well, but everything you're saying makes me, and I'm not the biggest sports person in the world, but I always think of these sports analogies, like, and when you talk about teams and like talking about the stories of successful teams and how they did it. That's like most sports documentaries. It's like, they had, it was this coach and these assistant coaches and they had these players and they picked these players who could be leaders and group, this whole hierarchy of leadership and coachability and a bunch of other things. But it made me think of, there's a woman who used to work here, Lisa Cashmore.
Yeah.
Remember Lisa?
I love Lisa.
And I remember this is a while back, but she had two people on her team who used to be hockey players and they went up through the ranks. No, like not NHL, but like OHL and some stuff. And we were having a conversation one day and she's like, I really regretted hiring them at first because they're hockey guys, right? She was thinking of like Shoresy kind of shit. Like this is before Shoresy, but like that kind of level.
I don't know
like,
what Shoresy is.
What?
Is this a sports reference that I should know?
Shoresy. Like,
I don't.
It's like Canadian content.
Oh, no.
Anyways,
I don't know.
like, hockey bros.
Okay.
She didn't want to hire hockey bros. She had this image in her head of, hey, I've hired these two guys who have played hockey their whole lives.
Yeah.
They're probably misogynistic or whatever, blah, blah, blah. She goes, I was dead wrong. And it was like, they are team players. They understand how to be team players. They pick things up. They look for opportunities to help other people. And I'm like, yeah, that's what being on a team is, right?
Makes sense.
I mean, sure.
That's why, you might not be a sports guy, but you're a sports dad.
I'm a sports dad.
Yeah. There's so much great value in playing teams, like kids playing team sports and figuring out how to work with others and having coaches. Like my husband played pretty serious football for 10 years as a teenager. And he said, I learned so much. My coaches were my mentors. They were like my first mentors outside my parents. And you just learn so much from these outside people who are just invested in guiding you and hearing that feedback.
This is a great topic for job seekers and
Why?
for hiring managers. We often, if you're deciding to hire someone, you produce a job spec, you have a checklist, you think you know what you're looking for. One of the most important things to look for in anyone you're hiring is this resilience. And that's often not found in the typical career story.
How would you be able to look for resilience in a candidate? Like what questions would you ask?
It's important to not just stick to the script of 10 questions that you think are going to give you the information you need to check off all of their skill sets on a piece of paper.
I mean, like what was the biggest challenge and how did you overcome it?
It's similar to that, but don't ask that question either.
No.
What are your strengths and weaknesses?
What I do and what I've learned to do through my career, both working in venture capital and interviewing a lot of executives with no end game, simply to understand what it is they're optimizing for in their careers and then help them navigate that, whether that's in our portfolio or not. The thing that I learned to do is ask people to tell their story.
Oh, that is
start at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's very like top grading, but I don't like top grading. It's more just fluid. Take me back. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? What kinds of activities did you do in your spare time? And facilitate a conversation that allows them to describe the experience they were having in each environment. And you can ask pointed questions in that moment of each career. How many people were working at the company? What were your biggest accomplishments? Whatever you want to throw in there. But especially in those moments of transition, you left that company. Why did you leave? What did you do in that gap period? Why did you choose that next company? What was the thought process there? And what you're looking for is not someone that, is so afraid of a moment of challenge, of fear, of uncertainty, but someone that's able to actually grasp that, harness it, and change the way it, influences their career and their trajectory.
like adaptability also.
Yeah. Adaptability, resilience, creativity, someone who is able to, make, often in these scenarios when you transition between two different jobs, it's not always the greatest scenario. We've all been through that, but someone that makes lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah.
And can speak to that as the catalyst for what allowed them to take the next step that pushed them in the right direction. But the same is true of job seekers. Often on our resumes, we're leaving out all the good details that tell the story of the hockey teams that we played for, the military academy that we attended, or that one year we decided to just completely fuck off to Europe and
What did you learn?
Traveled through 30 different countries, learned a new language, took cooking classes, whatever it might be. What did you learn on that journey? What did you learn about yourself or your career? The things that we do outside of work are often the defining characteristics of what make us so great at working with other people. So it also ties back into, sorry, I'm talking a lot.
That is what you're here for.
It also ties back into the ability for companies to just look outside of the box as well and not just look for the expected. We have a bad habit as humans of creating neural pathways that are cozy for us.
Is that kind of like you always tend to hire people that are like you?
Yeah. And we love the things that we know. So, for example, here in Canada, we love the University of Waterloo. We love McGill, Queen's, U of T, UBC. We love Shopify, BlackBerry, D2L. We love some of these bigger tech brands, and for good reason. But we also don't understand, or we understand very little of the same pedigree that exists in countries all over the world. So if we're importing global talent, we need to have a better understanding or be able to take on more risk in understanding what that pedigree looks like elsewhere.
I think it's all of this stuff ties in together, and it's so interesting to hear it. There are just a few things that I've learned meeting people like you in the Toronto Waterloo tech scene is the repeated notion of like founders or people who found companies or CEOs. They're really, no one knows how to do everything, right? Like there's no one CEO who is an expert in IP and an expert in marketing and an expert in this and an expert in that. Like nobody, it's just about figuring out what you're good at and building your team or filling those gaps,
asking questions,
right?
Call it drawing on your network,
Yeah.
calling your investors or your advisors, and asking some what feel like silly questions, but not feeling embarrassed to do so in order to move the needle every single day.
Yeah. And that's like our growth coaches here for like a certain level of our founder members. If you're at a certain level of membership, we have this like pool of growth coaches and they're all experts.
Yeah.
And they're all like, there's one guy, Frank, who's like a pitch coach. And, like everyone's got their little niche, or somebody will be like, okay, I can help you. we did an interview with a nurse oncologist who had this great business idea, and she's like, I had never written a business plan before,
Right.
And he just helped her, and she started winning pitch competitions, and now her product U-Twist is like picked up all over the U.S.
saw her
and
pitch.
Canada.
That was a good pitch.
Yeah, it was a great pitch. So it's just, no one knows how to do it all, but that's why it's so great to have a talent resource too, because talent is so hard. That is also something we hear from our founder community over and over and over, is talent is such a huge challenge, like filling the talent pipeline. How do you build a employee package that's enticing? Because it's hard to pull away those Shopify, D2L, Google folks. Like, they're very comfy. They don't want to leave.
They don't want to leave. And you can't blame them.
No.
I was talking to one last week that I was trying to convince to leave their job, and they said, I'm very comfortable.
So what is your main focus right now? Do you have your own business? Are you working at a firm? Like, what's your story? What's your story?
Okay. Well,
bring it back full circle.
Right now, I am a partner at True Search.
Okay.
We're a global executive search firm. So right now, I'm focused at becoming best in class in executive search at high growth tech companies. This is something I've always done off the side of my desk. So as we rewind through my career, from day one entering the tech industry, the thing that I was always most interested in was understanding network intelligence, what makes a holistic community, both geographically, but also in business, and what would allow that community to thrive, and helping folks find each other. So, and talent, think about talent in that holistic sense. It's not just about job seekers. Everybody is a person that has talent, that has something to give. We were just talking about mentors, helping founders, leaders, pattern match who it is that they are seeking in any given moment, and being someone that can say, I might not be the expert you're looking for, but I'm going to find that person for you, or I'm going to introduce you to that person. That's always been the MO of my career from day one. For context, I actually don't come from tech. I don't come from business. I thought I was going to save the world. I did a master's in human rights. I lived in the UK, in Cambodia, and South Africa. I came back to Canada broke because a master's in the UK is very expensive, and maybe I drank too much beer. Yeah, I came back broke and only wearing stretchy pants from all of the beer that I drank.
Worth it.
But I landed here. I started working in nonprofits. I realized that in theory, I wanted to change the world, but in practice, international development was not the way I wanted to do it. It was covered in red tape, super bureaucratic. And I was wondering, if this is covered in red tape, where are the people running with scissors? Which is a silly thing to say. Like,
I love that. Poetic.
Where can I find the people that want to change the world, who are taking bigger risks, who don't know what they're doing, who are doing it with new materials, new ideas? This all happened around the same time as the Arab Spring, and we were seeing the impact of social media on truth-telling. And so for me, technology made sense. Mobile was huge. This was like the early 2010s. And so I ended up taking a part-time content marketing job at the DMZ and turning down a full-time job with the Blue Jays Jays Care Foundation, in favor of chasing this pipe dream of what is happening in tech. That's so special. Also, shout out to everyone who worked at the DMZ at that time. That was one of the best teams that I ever worked with. Val Fox was still there. She was the founder. It was also a really amazing way to enter tech under female leadership, which is also very rare. The DMZ is, it's still the #1 university-based incubator in the world, or ranked by the UBI Index. They've done an amazing thing at what is now TMU. There's a lot of acronyms here.
I know.
So
that's
many
Ryerson.
acronyms.
That's my alma mater, which is now the Toronto Metropolitan University, or TMU.
I have some friends out there that love calling it Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles University, and I now can't get it out of my head. And I love you, Ryerson. I'm sorry if you're listening to this, or TMU. So I started at the DMZ. I'll get through this pretty quickly, but I rolled up my sleeves. I showed up on day one. For anyone with context, a part-time content marketer is just the bottom of the food chain. Like the person that will do anything.
It's a lot of tweeting.
It's a lot of tweeting.
There's a shit ton of tweeting probably.
Conferences.
Yeah. Oh, live tweeting.
Oh, hosting events. Live tweeting. Oh yeah.
He's giving Alex
PTSD.
PTSD.
Massive PTSD from live tweeting events. Ugh.
Yeah, you can't type fast enough. No. I just said yes. I said yes to everything. I was also like in my 20s and had no kids at that time. And I was on the learner's journey. I had just finished a degree in something completely seemingly irrelevant. And I stepped into this to say yes to everything. And also to bring in my knowledge of what a healthy society and community looks like to the understanding of what healthy business ecosystem looks like specifically for startups. So that's what sort of naturally allowed me to follow the path of, I was at the DMZ. I met Alex Norman and Jason Goldlist. They hosted one version of TechTO at the DMZ. They said, we need someone to do marketing and social media and join our team. We don't know what we're doing. We want to scale this big thing. I joined them, co-founded that business. Fast forward a year and a half, we were hosting 700-person events at RBC Water Park Place on a monthly basis with TechTO. And so scaling that need for the ecosystem, I realized that I didn't want to host events for a living and that I was more interested in network intelligence using digital means. And that's where I actually almost moved to the States with a US company called the Human Diagnosis Project, ahead of its time, trying to use AI to create an algorithm around diagnostics so doctors don't need to rely on textbooks and their own brain. At the last minute, instead of San Francisco, they wanted me to move to DC. Donald Trump was elected. Absolutely not. I'm sorry. I just couldn't do it.
I was living in the US at that time.
Yeah. People don't, at that time, people thought I was crazy for not taking the risk. I mean, it's an amazing business.
Also, there were a lot of immigration challenges there when he was...
And a lot of subsequent challenges, too.
And a lot of other challenges. Well, when I lived there from 2014 to 2019, and there was a lot of like shakeups with NAFTA, and I was at one point on a NAFTA visa, a TN visa, and there was a lot of uncertainty around those. And there were a lot of challenges to immigrate to the U.S. at that time.
Yeah. It just didn't feel right.
Yeah.
Being close to his house felt weird. So I stayed here. I joined Golden Ventures because I said, do I go and do a master's? Do I find someone that'll pay me to learn business? They had a need for someone in post-investment. Platform was really new and especially new in Canada. The idea of investing in basically productizing the impact you're making for your portfolio companies after you write a check. Joined that team. Within 2 years, we came up with the idea of Prospect. It actually was opportunistic in that we used a piece of software that aggregated all the jobs available in our portfolio into one place. That was helpful. It solved the problem of me not having to bug founders for this information. All of a sudden, light bulb for me went off. Why doesn't this exist on a national scale? Why aren't we making it easier for job seekers to find jobs in Canadian tech companies? We built Prospect. It became very popular and very necessary overnight. I spun that out into its own nonprofit and scaled that for 2 years. And I'm bringing this up because it's relevant. It now lives here at Communitech as
Communitech bought it. Yeah.
And
workintech.ca.
Workintech.ca. And then I joined Drive Capital as a talent partner and got to roll up my sleeves in a venture environment again. And then I stepped into this role in executive search because after working across venture and with venture scalable businesses, I do think that we have a good sample of folks doing external recruitment for our tech industry. But compared to the US, we are so far behind.
Oh.
We don't have a ton of people who have relevant hands-on operating experience in search in Canada. Specifically folks that are willing to fill these mission critical roles for Canadian tech companies. And I saw a need not only to fill that gap and be that person or, help cultivate that talent here, but to also just hone this skill myself. I think it's really, really fascinating to learn how to find the best person for a job.
So executive search, you're focused on like what roles or what?
Yeah, is it like VP and above or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Basically VP, C-suite
Yeah.
roles for Series A or seed to seed plus companies. And we work across asset classes from seed to public markets and then across industries, geographies, and functions. But our firm, True Search, focuses on tech and tech-enabled businesses. And all of our roles sort of have a fundamental principle in innovation. And these businesses are trying to innovate. The individuals you're trying to recruit are innovative individuals.
And you build relationships with talent out there also. So if somebody's like a little curious, they could, at that level, they could
Like a
get in
free
touch with
agent.
you.
Yeah, they're like free agents.
Well, maybe someone's got a job.
No, you can still have a job and be a free agent.
Okay. Like a free
I
agent
don't
in
know.
your
I'm
mind?
I'm not a sports person. I just assume that's how that works.
Yeah.
Like you're still
talking
playing
to the
on a
wrong
team, like-
person
yeah.
about sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not this
Free
podcast.
agents.
Yeah.
There are lots of sports podcasts for
Like
people to listen to.
if I was a CTO and I was working at company X, I'm like, it's good. We've grown.
Sure.
You know, we're never gonna go public, whatever it happened to be. And like now I've vested. It's time to bounce. Right. Like that. Could I approach you and just be like, hey, I'm like looking for another challenge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. Recruiters, that's not really their job. And this is what I've learned being in this market. Their job is to focus on the specs that they're trying to fill. So their focus is that their client comes to them where they have a series of clients.
Yeah.
I have an opening. You know exactly what they're looking for. Most recruiters don't really want to talk to talent that's irrelevant to that or that search or the searches that they're on.
So how do they fill that gap? They scramble to look.
So the job of a recruiter is to go and knock on someone's door when they're not looking.
Right.
To build out a job spec, to build out a scorecard, to know exactly the profile of the archetypes you're seeking, and to go and find them. It's the opposite of posting a job description. It's, building a market map, knowing all of the companies where these folks could exist, going and building out the candidate list, proactively reaching out to those individuals. I love talking with smart people. I love helping them navigate their careers, even if I can't help them land that job. And I especially love helping Canadian talent stay in Canada and work at Canadian companies.
Totally.
So I always take these calls because if I can be helpful on a 15-minute, 30-minute call to a Canadian executive who's trying to navigate their career, doesn't know where to start, which FYI, none of us do. Even if you are a professional at this, it's daunting to have 700 roads in front of you and not knowing which one to choose and defining what your search should be. So in so much that I can be helpful to anyone looking for jobs in Canadian tech, I try to do that. And you know where it starts? It's workintech.ca.
Love that.
I know that's a silly plug, but it comes back to here's an amazing place to look. If you're a junior or mid-level contributor, all of those jobs will be posted there. If you are an executive, workintech.ca will not have a VP, won't often have C-suite positions posted. Right. However, it doesn't mean you can't use it to market map your own search. If most of the innovative Canadian tech companies are listed there, you can actually just toggle to the company tab and start searching for industry, business model, technology type, location, company size, and get a better sense of the market, and then go after those companies, those investors, those relationships you have.
I think as somebody who is a Canadian who my partner and I left to work in the States and then we came back and we both, although I don't have a technology role, I have worked in tech companies and my husband is he's a developer. I do coming back and then working for Communitech felt super altruistic of just being like, we should keep, I should put my energy in making Canada a great place for tech companies
specifically to be. KW.
Yeah. And
even more important.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's me.
Well, yes. Yeah. Waterloo region is great. I grew up in Toronto, so I feel I love Kitchener and I love working here. But I think that often folks in Toronto or Vancouver, these are amazing places to live, but often you get a little horse blinders on of like, this is the only place to be. And I don't agree. I think there are lots of great places to work and live in Canada.
I've only lived here, so I don't.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Well, like in Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Toronto is wonderful,
It's fantastic.
but it's very expensive.
Yeah. I live in Toronto. I can
Yeah.
attest to
Yeah,
that.
it's
With
crazy.
2 kids in a tiny backyard. You had a few good questions
Yeah.
listed here, namely talking about just the negativity around tech talent right now, and then
Yeah.
also the influence of AI. We should probably cover those. I think they're relevant.
We should. And that's when your name came up for this. I'm like, this is a good thing. Now, I spend too much time on LinkedIn. Far too much time. It's like I quit.
Why?
Because I quit Twitter, but I didn't really quit social media. I just like replaced it with something else, which is LinkedIn.
Okay.
And like now I hate scroll
People-
LinkedIn.
People post on LinkedIn. Like when I see people post on LinkedIn, I'm like, this is Facebook circa 2011. They're like big long statuses of everything going on in their life. It's
personal
juicy. Juicy.
It's terrible. So but as I scroll through, and I have a good, like most of the people, my connections on LinkedIn, my professional network is people in tech, mainly people in tech. And I see a lot of reposts of, I applied for 95 jobs in the last 3 months and I've only gotten 2 interviews and then I got ghosted on, like that kind of thing, right? A lot of talk about getting ghosted, a lot of talk about lack of follow-up of just saying, hey, you didn't get the role, here's why.
And you think this is unique to the tech industry?
No, this is all, it's anecdotal and it's very subjective based on my network.
Yeah.
But then
Your
I
echo
have
chamber.
friends who work in construction and the trades and they don't have those stories. They have the same, we can't hire people fast enough and, no one's coming out of high school or post-secondary with the skills they need for construction. You could trade those, but where it differs is like if you apply for a job at a construction company, most people I know, the interview process is pretty straightforward. I haven't heard a lot of horror stories. Tech, I hear horror stories about it. And the AI thing even, scan, like, here's the things, like when I see these, like, here's how to, goose your resume so the AI reader gets past. I'm like, what, like, dystopian bullshit is this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us, what is the dystopian bullshit, Marianne?
Early stage companies have always and will always suck at hiring.
So they don't have the manpower.
They don't have the manpower. They
Or
don't have the
woman power.
experience. They're new to it. It's the same reason they're generally bad at customer success. And if you look at these things in very similar buckets, customer success and talent success, like, hiring is also another form of customer success and a similar workflow. They just often don't invest in the technology for the hiring process early on. They don't have someone dedicated to it. They don't have a process defined, which means that they also underestimate the capacity it's going to require from any single individual or group of individuals at the organization to actually hire and get something across the finish line. I think that the stat is that it's on average for a junior hire, if you were to run the process internally, on a junior to mid-level hire, it's $4,000 an employee, and that includes the cost to post. It also includes all of the hours put in.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. When you think about hiring 10, 20 people a year, it's a lot of money that
It adds up on a startup budget for sure.
Yeah.
This is where startups need to start quantifying this and then asking themselves, like, who's responsible for this? And should we have a dedicated person in this role? That's like, it's important to measure how much energy is going in. It's also just important to invest in technology that makes you better at this job. That's one piece. And you don't have to buy the most expensive software out there when you're a 5-person team. You can run this through a spreadsheet, but just first of all, actually, I should have said, first of all, just have a defined process. Go and talk to people who have these processes in place or have built them. Talk to someone who is 10 steps ahead of you, talk to someone who's 5 steps ahead of you, and talk to someone who's 1 step ahead of you, and understand the road that's ahead for what it means to scale your business and all of the things that you should put in place. And find out what they're using to make their lives easier and how much it costs. Some of these resources cost nothing. They're cheap. I mean, you could build a hiring workflow on Zapier for $20 a month. that ensures that every single candidate gets there's a follow-up sent to them, whether you've accepted them or rejected them. But you can also find other more sophisticated softwares. Just having a process in the first place, I think, is important. Ghosting candidates leaves such a bad taste in people's mouths. And it is already proven that companies that have an established process, hiring and onboarding process, have a way more productive workforce because they're investing in the success of the people that they are interviewing, the people that they're hiring, and then in that onboarding process, they're investing not only in that individual, but the entire team in integrating that person into the company. And it's one thing to come up with a list in your onboarding process of all the things this person needs to learn. It's an entirely different thing to design that process so that they can be naturally integrated into the workflow. It's not rocket science. And again, you can learn from your peers. You can knock on anyone's door, any founder, any company, Communitech, DMC, anywhere, like investors, whatever it is, like you can knock on someone's door and learn from them.
Yeah. I mean, the onboarding thing is, I think about my onboarding experiences over my career. And they're like, there's hits and misses. Like I like this from this one. And like, I got an email or I got, stickers or some nonsense. Right. But I had my first job in tech, and this is in 2020. No, wait, 2020, 2000. Shit. I'm so old.
Yeah.
It was in 2000. And the onboarding experience was so great. Like it defined the level, like that bar for onboarding. I've never had anything as good. Like it was like early handhelds.
That was at a big.
It was like we were building stuff with like VB3. Like it was freaking ancient. But it was like, they made us build it. Not made us. We built our own desks. We went to Costco and picked up the desk, and you came back and you built and everyone helped, but like you built your desk, which kind of sounds like a little bit rough, but like it was good. Like you built the place you're going to work, but then they took you out, you met people in the industry, you met customers, and this is all in the first month. Like you're just learning the industry, you're learning the technology, you're learning all the standards. And then they're like, okay, now you're going to start.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And this was before LinkedIn, and we all knew to
I've
share this
never
stuff.
heard of anything like that
It
before.
was, but it set the tone. And then when I got to the point where I was onboarding people,
You
that
knew what to do.
I knew exactly what to do.
I did have a good onboarding experience at the job. I at one job, and when I got hired here, I asked for it. I said, "This is this is what I would like," and then they made it for me.
I was onboarded here so long ago. I don't even remember.
Yeah,
it was good, I guess.
Yeah, but now and then the onboarding thing that I've created is now that's a bit of the standard for my team, at least. And
talk about a good LinkedIn post to share.
Talk to Tina right there. There's your thought leadership.
Right.
This is what people need.
I'm going to endorse
direction
you
on onboarding experiences.
I'm going to endorse you for onboarding.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Do that right when I get back.
Oh yeah. I don't use LinkedIn like I should. I really just.
Do you guys have this where like my wife does not go on LinkedIn at all, and she has a profile obviously, because we all do, right? But like never goes on or anything. And I'll say something. She's like, "What's happening on LinkedIn?" I'm like, "Don't you ever like log in?" She goes, "No." I'm like, what do you mean you don't look at it? And I'm like,
well,
you're missing out.
I am horrible at going on LinkedIn and seeing that I have messages from like 9 months ago. It's horrible.
See, okay, so you're that.
It's bad.
I'm a recruiter now, so I'm basically married to LinkedIn, for better or for worse. But I also similarly, I'm not on Twitter that much anymore. I guess it's not called Twitter anymore, but I refuse.
Skydome, it's still Twitter.
Skydome is still Twitter.
Right.
I deleted Instagram.
Good for you.
I'm going to just be honest. That was the best decision I ever made. And I know that's what everyone says. It's cliche, but you don't need it.
That's super interesting.
I'm going to ask you this.
So good.
When you turn on Instagram and you spend time on it, do you feel good?
No. I thought of it this morning as I was waiting for the coffee to brew, and I ended up on like scrolling through stuff, and I'm like, why the hell am I on this right now? Like there's a book that I should be reading that I have not. Kevin's book. I haven't started yet.
Oh, I haven't read it yet either. I need someone. I need to buy it.
Coworker
Kevin Crowley wrote a book. He is here's our ex.
I'm gonna read it.
Communications director, and the book is called
Sir Biddling You. And you can get copies at Wordsworth Book, who just celebrated their 40th anniversary in Uptown Waterloo. Plug.
That's good.
Local bookstore. That's
And
nice.
local writer. And he retired and he wrote this book, and it's supposed to be amazing.
It's kind of like about Laurier, which is even better.
Spicy.
Yeah.
He's got the tea.
Internal. Yeah.
Love it.
Inside knowledge.
Yeah, Instagram for sure. I have a friend. I was talking to a coworker here. She says she deleted it from her phone, but then she finds herself logging on to her desktop and she's like, nothing can stop me. Like I try to put these, and I'm totally addicted to Instagram. I'm on it all the time.
And I don't let my 12-year-old is like, I'm on Instagram. Like, you're not getting Instagram.
You gotta set the example. I had it in a folder on the 4th page, and I found myself just habitually going through the motions to get to it, and I realized that this was a mess, so I deleted it.
Good for you.
But this actually comes back to the talent conversation as well, which is
bring it all back,
like personal brand and how you're representing yourself online. This is also something when we were talking about
LinkedIn
executives and chatting with people about their next career move. You don't need to reinvent the wheel when you start to think about what it means to put yourself out there. People have done a really good job, but there's sort of a few different things you should do. Instagram and Twitter aside, if you use them, like just make sure they're optimized, quote unquote. What that means is like, if you don't want people finding your Instagram, hide it, right? Like close it. That's a personal choice. I have nothing to hide, so it doesn't matter. But LinkedIn, you should have a personal website. You should just put yourself out there, represent who you want, what it is that you're seeking online. Often when I talk to people about what it is that they're looking for, their LinkedIn or their website don't reflect that. And it's usually because they want to pivot. They've done X job for a while and they want to learn more in this other area or avenue, and it's just not reflected.
So I want to ask about that. Like, do you have advice on how to do that? So, because it's a bit awkward. So like if you're employed and you're curious, but you don't want your employer to know you're curious, how would you kind of navigate that?
Well, LinkedIn does have features that allows you to say that you're open to work or curious without your employer finding out. So that's an important piece. You don't have to put the hashtag banner across your image to sort of put that out there. The other thing is just changing your LinkedIn to reflect like your aspirations, your identity, your accomplishments. It's not a tip off to your employer if you have a great LinkedIn. And there's a great book, and I forget who the author is, called Steal Like an Artist. You don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
You can go, if you're a director of brand right now and you want to be a creative director and lead a team of that kind, go and find all the creative directors that are relevant to your industry, your stage, your market, whatever it is, on LinkedIn. Just check out how they're representing themselves, what types of things they're speaking to, and replicate that in your own story on LinkedIn. Also, this is an aside, but very important. You don't need to look hot on LinkedIn. So cropping.
Oh, it's too late for that for me.
Yeah, right.
It's over.
So like cropping a photo of you looking cute is not a representation of what you will be like to work with. It's not that complicated. You don't need to pay for headshots. You could take an iPhone on portrait mode, stand in front of a cedar bush in your backyard, smile.
Alex
happy.
actually took my headshot, and you did a really good job. I'm obsessed with my headshot.
No
I think it
way.
looks
I'm
great.
Slightly biased just because I shoot, and then I have a bunch of friends who shoot. But even you can find a decent person to do your headshot
for sure.
On budget, and like you use it for everything. Like the number of times over the years, it's like I need a headshot and a bio. I'm like, I've got a headshot and a bio. It's like sitting on like Google Drive.
And as a creative director, I don't quite understand how folks at like a certain level don't have a good, in the world of I've said this 1,000 times in the last 6 months, in the world of everyone having a camera in their pocket, like a very high resolution camera in their pocket with 10,000 photos of themselves in their phone, and then whatever their LinkedIn photo or their headshot is just
We're just self-conscious.
Awful.
People are self-conscious. They put it off. They don't need to.
Right.
No.
Yeah. No one's
Right?
ever really satisfied with how they look. Like people, very traditionally attractive people that I know are never satisfied with their headshot.
But
and I'm
the
like,
number of times
I don't know.
I'll do a shoot and they're like, oh, I hate getting my picture taken. I'm like, everyone hates getting
everybody
your picture
hates
taken.
it. Everybody hates hearing their
You know what's funny?
voice. Everybody hates seeing a recording of themselves.
If you look at a photo of yourself 2 years ago, you're going to love it. Every
Totally.
single one. Doesn't matter. So when you're taking a photo today, just think about it 2 years from now. You are going to look back. You're going to love them all. All of them. You're going to love them because you're always going to look younger than you did today. But really, I think the other challenge, what I see from a lot of job seekers is that it just feels daunting to think about revamping your LinkedIn. Like, what should my headshot look like? What should my about section look like? The banner background, like what should that be? Don't overthink it. Just do it. Just get something out there. Take an iPhone photo, get it out there. And if you want to invest more in a photographer, you want to, work with a writer for your about section, you can invest in all of those pieces. But today, you can just move the needle by having a little bit more in there. The other thing that's really important to say, a bit of a divergence, is if you're a founder of a company or you're an executive at a company, you should want your employees to look fucking awesome on the internet. You should also empower them. And this assumes that this is the culture that you're creating, which is like high growth, 10 out of 10 talent culture. You should encourage them to take calls from recruiters, to have those conversations, to understand what the competitive landscape looks like, and to report it back to you. You should encourage them to say to you when it's time, like when they get an offer or they feel like they're being underpaid based on what they're hearing, like to have that conversation. This culture of secrecy.
That is so unlike anything I've heard.
I think it's being done by, by great companies,
right.
Frankly. If you create a culture of transparency in that respect, where you value your employee because they are a person who has a career that is at your company right now and likely somewhere else in the future, it's a conversation. It's not, you don't own them. They are, you're trying to optimize them. You're driving the car. They're not driving you. And so you're figuring out what best looks like for them. And this is also an important piece around performance and management, which it's like probably a whole rabbit hole. But I really think that if you are trying to build a world-class team, that level of transparency is a huge differentiator. And it means you can always stay appraised to the market price for your talent as well.
That's major. I like that. I never thought of like that level of trust.
No, I've never heard that.
But it costs companies way more to replace an A player than it does to, lose them because they didn't have that conversation. And
what does that conversation look like? So you're head of talent or HR or whatever, people and culture at a company, and you say to your team, we let us, be a secret agent out there. And if we encourage you to take the call and let us know what you find out.
Yeah. I don't even think it's a secret agent. You just say like, we want you to be successful.
Right.
We want you to be successful here. We want you to be successful in life. And so when someone knocks on your door with another job opportunity that might be interesting to you or in the same world, and it would benefit you to understand what it is that they are optimizing for and how much they're paying, go and have that conversation and bring it back to us. And we will tell you fundamentally if we cannot afford to match that. And if we need to keep you at the company at that stage, like if you want to pursue this and we have to find other creative means, we're going to find other creative means. If that's more equity, if it's more vacation time, whatever, you can learn a lot through those conversations. I think it's no matter what challenging, but this culture of secrecy where we feel like we own our employees and that they have to sneak around having conversations, it just doesn't feel good. Yeah. And when your A players are doing that, that feels even worse. But if someone comes to you and says, I'm making, $75,000 right now, and this company wants to pay me $250,000, and you know that you can't pay them that amount, you can say like, go take that job if that's what you're optimizing for and that's what you want. And you can create a transition plan with that person instead of them sort of unceremoniously table flipping and leaving.
Well, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I think there's so much to be said. And I think a lot about like employer brand. There's so many experiences. I was just talking to, we have a co-op here. I'm not going to say who it was or what large Canadian organization they worked for, they did a co-op for previously, but they said there was no real system for them. There was no real work for them. It was very disorganized, and this was a very large organization.
You can tell me after this?
Sure.
I want to know.
And I said to them, I have also worked for a large organization where they took the university co-op program very seriously because they knew it was a long-term talent brand play, and that all of these kind of going back to what you were saying about the, you didn't get the job, but we're sending you a really polite email letting you know the status update of your application. All of these things, they build into, it's not marketing dollars, but it's an investment into your employer brand by taking these sort of interpersonal relationships and everything from a co-op level all the way up, taking that really, and people remember that. They remember those experiences throughout their career. And then if they go to get hired or they get an offer from two different firms and one of them, they have this bad reputation of not really having their ducks in a row with things, interpersonal stuff, they're not going to go with them.
It's funny because what you were just saying about like that open and honest conversation, and if someone says like this is the offer I got, this is what I'm gonna go for. I worked with someone years ago, and they're like, their attitude was, if someone comes and says I got a job offer here, this is what it is, he would just like tell them to leave on the spot. And it was because in his head it's like
betrayal.
Well, no. In his head, it's like they've already made the decision to leave. So he was always like, if someone is interviewed somewhere else and got to the stage where they got an offer, they've already chosen to leave. So there's no point. The relationship is not salvageable, and there's no point. And it was like cold. And I'm like, I always in my head, I'm like, I don't know about this. It doesn't seem like maybe the right way to go about it. You're burning a whole bunch of bridges. You're not building relationships with people. I don't think this person necessarily really cared, so it doesn't, whatever. But I like the way you put it.
Yeah. It sounds like that person's needs were not being met and there wasn't a safe space for them to express it.
Yeah.
Another funny thing that you can learn through that level of transparency is that people don't want to do the same thing forever. And that this is a learner's journey, and someone who starts in customer success might actually want to end up in finance one day. And if you're able to help them carve that path at your company, if they are an amazing team member and performer, knowing that in advance helps to ensure that if they are having those types of conversations, they can come back and say, hey, I had a conversation about this potential opportunity. Often what happens when as a recruiter, when I approach people with opportunities, they may have never even thought that was an option for them. And so if we plant the seed with them, they can go back to their employer, ideally not, because ideally I'm convincing enough, but they can go back to their employer and say, I never thought that I could transition from this role into this role, or, start taking on more responsibility in this specific area or function. And it's an opportunity to get creative about how that person's skill set is utilized and filling. This is the whole idea of up-leveling people within your own organization and helping them build careers through your organization, not just thinking of them as linear individuals.
And asking people repeatedly, what are your interests? What are you interested in? You might be surprised to hear what they want to do. I'm always surprised when I ask folks. As a creative director, I sit down with people sometimes for coffee, and so many people say to me, I always wanted to be a graphic designer. I always thought about going to school for that. And you just asking people, you never know what they're interested in doing.
We have to figure out a segue.
A segue for Marianne to introduce herself?
Wait, I want to say one more thing.
Say one more thing.
AI is definitely changing the hiring process.
How?
I think that there was a lot of manual labor is what it felt like on both sides of the spectrum that was unnecessary. Crafting and recrafting your cover letter and your resume over and over and over again 100 times to try and fit the needs of every single employer is exhausting. And so allowing candidates to get smarter about positioning themselves, articulating themselves, and creating saving them time and their mental health, frankly, in that process, that's one piece of it. And I won't get into all of the other things like interview preparation and personalized job recommendations. There's all sorts of interesting things that AI can do. On the company side, just a vastly improved candidate experience as these AIs can pick up some of these mundane tasks that we don't need to do anymore. One of the risks, though, is that AI is going to further entrench this bias towards pedigree and familiarity. And that, yes, we have automated resume screening and people are starting to optimize their resumes for AI bots and all of that. Bias screening is another amazing opportunity to sort of filter out cultural and personal bias. The theory that I have that I think is really interesting is, I think I'm interesting, apparently.
I think you're very interesting. You've set the bar very high for podcast guests. This is going to be tough
flattering.
to beat.
So the AI, it's not going to be about the patterns it can find. It's about the anomalies. And this comes back to our earlier conversation about hockey teams, sports, military, gymnasts. Someone who built think about it, I built 1,000 model planes in my lifetime, something quirky. What I think is cool, and it doesn't exist yet, is AI's ability to pattern match all the things that you're looking for and then find the anomalies. Here are all the people, here are the 10, 15 people that stand out because they are different than the rest of the crowd. They have everything you're looking for, but wow, they spent 4 years, living in this foreign country, or they came from this entirely different, educational background, or they, lived in, I already said geographically, but, a bunch of different interesting things. They worked in the military. They were on the sports team. They, demonstrating that adversity, that interesting factor that allows that person to stand out. That's where I think AI can and should play a role. In the hiring process, it just doesn't exist yet. I am fiercely optimistic about Canadian tech and our ability to be the best place in the world to build a company. I do think that we have many hurdles and barriers to get there, and a lot that are very poignant in market right now. Productivity crisis, this capital gains hike.
We want a sound effect for the capital gains.
There's
as well.
I didn't touch it.
But I don't think that, I don't think that, I think we can handle it. I think we can overcome these hurdles. And I am very, very optimistic. And even though I work with companies across North America, even globally, I still come back to, I think I work the hardest and I'm most passionate about moving the needle on Canadian tech.
Same.
See, and that's the awesome outro. You had the intro and the outro in one thing.
That was great. Very
Did
articulate.
I do it?
Oh,
Yeah,
you
cool.
killed it.
Guys, this is really fun.
You made us look very good, Marianne.
You have a good thing going here. I'm excited.
Thanks for joining us today. If you have any feedback or if you want to talk to us about anything, not anything, but podcast related things, you can reach out to Communitech on social media. Our handle is @Communitech. Also communitech.ca, where you can learn more about what Communitech does as an organization, how we can help founders start, grow, and succeed. If you are a founder, you can learn about our different membership models and how we can help you. And if you are a partner that wants to plug into the community of tech, we have lots of different options. Lots of opportunities for both founders and partners on communitech.ca.